and many other leaders were also in exile. Today they are in leadership. Okay. So exile per se does not mean you should abandon your country or you should give up. Sometimes it's a way of strategizing, having the space to strategize. Okay. And if he was out of the country and he returned and he's in leadership, so can others. So we need to, we need to look at these as different strategies. For some people, they will remain in Uganda and other people will be out of the country. But if we are all trying to, to score in the same goal, we will all be winners. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the added insight, Justice Kisakye. So from my end and the young lawyers, we are proudly affiliated, and we are going to push up. You gave us creative insights into how to pass on some of these things, the writing of petitions, the speaking up. One of my senior colleagues, is a lawyer, Mr. Baguma Richard Ratoro, on WhatsApp also put that one of the other
blessed than you, like for example, the difference between me and the people who didn't go to school, why should it be? It would have been the other way around, that you were very, you had the ability to become a lawyer, but you didn't have an opportunity to go to school. So for me, faith is very important. And I also watched, because of my Christian upbringing, I saw my parents, my dad, for example, he used to go pass by roadblocks set up by Idi Amin soldiers and even Obote soldiers, and they would ask him, "Wuko na bunduki?" and he would say, "Wuko," because he was a born again Christian and he didn't fear to die. But surprisingly, those soldiers, they were touched, and some of them asked him for Bibles, and he would go to the Uganda bookshop and buy them Bibles and deliver them at roadblocks. Today, I've seen some speeches from our president praising our members of the armed forces as being very like nuns. By the way, I want to comment, I think the majority of our armed forces are disciplined. But like I've said, in the judiciary, we have some indisciplined members in all the ranks. In the judiciary, in parliament, in public office, in security forces. And if we don't stand up to the right principles, unfortunately, our names all get soiled up. So I want to commend my colleagues in the judiciary, in the army, and all those serving in the army of Uganda, in the police of Uganda, in the public service, who are doing the right thing. But for those who are not doing the right thing, please stop. Stop forthwith, follow the law, and do the right thing so that you can give and bring honor to the office that you hold. So faith was very important, and faith is still very important today. God has seen me through all my blessings. I can't say I was the most, qualified or brightest to serve on the Supreme Court of Uganda. So I served at Apex Court, but I was also, I left earlier than I needed to leave, because for me, it wasn't completing, the years that I had to, to serve. It was more of like, Lord, I've made my contribution here. And once I felt the voice, especially in light of the persecution that I was going through, when the voice came to me, especially also with the reports of the threats to my life, it was time to leave, and I left. But having, left and currently where I am, I'm also continuing to make a contribution based on faith. I still have the option to keep quiet and watch and pray silently, but I pray and even pray, but continue to advocate and seek God's guidance. And I for all those Christians and God-fearing and other people of other faith, continue to call on the Lord to intervene in our situation in Uganda so that we can live in a peaceful and prosperous country where we all enjoy, and where citizens do not have to leave their country because we cannot tolerate each other's differences of opinions.
Oh, well, that's very powerful. Thank you so much. Now, I have so many questions to women who are visible in civic, political, and justice-related spaces in Uganda face distinct and openly, and often deeply personal consequences when state power is exercised against them. And obviously, because of that, a drop in the number of women who are involved in politics. Now, from your personal perspective as a jurist, as a mother, and as a woman who has navigated both public service and personal cost, what counsel would you give to Ugandan women who are navigating these spaces? And perhaps maybe, a call on to them to get back into the space, because we need everyone in this fight.
Sandra, maybe before the judge comes in, and this is for the judge to guide us. I think she's also a grandmother, so she's not only a mother, but she's also a grandmother. Yeah, I yield.
Okay. For my fellow, I think we need another space. President Semakade and Council, the Council of the RNB. Probably we need another space to talk about the women's movement, but I don't. You said what words do I have to encourage them? Does that mean that's like by public demand? Yeah, we do, because the women's movement, we need to reflect on us amongst ourselves and just see if we are also continuing to be on the track. We are the mothers of the nation, and our mothers, we are strong women. Can we claim we are, with all the education and the empowerment that we have received? Can we claim we are even standing in the feet of our mothers who achieved so much with much less opportunities and much less education and maybe even resources? I doubt. But it's very, and you see, when, for me, the women's movement, we need to look at it. There are some very specific issues that affect women, but we need to discuss these issues with our fathers, our husbands, our brothers, because in community, when we live in Uganda, the women don't live in one side of, on one side of the country, and the men live on another side of the country. We live in our homes. If you have a son or if you have a child, you should be concerned if your son or your daughter, when they leave home, they'll come home safely. If your child is going to school, you should be concerned if this child is receiving quality education, or if they are being graded, that they are being graded correctly. I've had some reports about our current grading, which seems to be favoring certain parts of or certain schools, and so there are issues. It seems like there are issues that have been also raised about how we are currently grading our students, and that this is not following how the students fared, and some other parameters are being used to judge our students. So, but the issues that affect men equally affect us, because the men are our husbands, the men are our children, the men are our fathers. And we can't afford to sit on the block. Now, when it comes to us women, we also have issues that affect us in our motherhood. When I was at the Supreme Court, for example, a case was brought, Sehud versus, I think, Attorney General. And that case had been brought by one of the organizations where they were saying the continuing high maternal mortality rate in Uganda is unacceptable. You can check it out. I think even up to today, at that time we still had, and maybe even today, we had one of the highest maternal mortality rates. I think I'm dead. Maternal mortality rates in the world. Why do we have them? Women cannot access contraceptives. Women do not have control over when and where to have sex. And, some of these things feed into their high, birth rates. And then when they go to hospitals, they didn't have the provisions that, ensure that they can have safe deliveries. And the government of that day, I think the Constitutional Court in that case had argued that, these are matters which need to defer to the executive. We can't look into how the government budgets, because for us that is the preserve of the executive. And when it came to the court, and I had the honor to write the lead judgment. You can read it up, look it up. And my colleagues agreed with me. We said, no, you can't defer. The courts were put in place to review how the executive and to review the laws and how the executive and the parliament are complying with these laws, and even private citizens. And we will defer to the executive if they have done the right thing. If they haven't done the right thing, they don't have any immunity from court scrutiny. That decision is there. You can look it up. Sehud is, I think, is CEHURD versus Attorney General of Uganda. It wasn't a dissent. It was my lead judgment. By the way, the impression that many of you have that I was writing dissents is not necessarily true. I was always writing dissents. I wrote many lead judgments, which my colleagues agreed with. That's one of them. Another person was mentioning Rabinumi, which was talking about marital rights. It was, again, I wrote the lead judgment and colleagues agreed with me. We wrote another decision about landlords. So there are many. If you go to the judiciary website, ULI, I think Uganda Legal Information Institute website, the judgments of the Supreme Court, and you search, these judgments, or maybe search by my name, you can find some of these judgments. But we need to, that's why earlier on I said, let's organize some of these spaces to see what kind of jurisprudence currently exists. Where did we go? The courts haven't always got it right, but sometimes I believe we tried, or we've tried to fill in the gaps. But where we didn't fill in the gaps as the bar, as long as we still have the Supreme Court of Uganda, you need to be looking at how do we navigate this space. And for some of us who have been there, I would be happy to engage with you about how to navigate this space, especially now the political space. You can't have a situation. We need to examine how some of these principles play out in the political space. For example, in ordinary law, if you have if you employ a driver, right, and the driver goes and knocks people, you are vicariously liable, right? That's a principle. If you have employees and the Attorney General is supposed to be, we are supposed to be responsible if you have employees doing things that end up injuring the property of others. But now you have a situation in our governance where you have masked, uniformed soldiers who have even removed their names. And now, like in the recent case of the lawyer who was locked, thrown on the pickup, I saw the tape by Honorable Nambeshe. Yeah.
Judge, apologies for intervening. The lawyer's name is called Kakuru Tumsime.
Yeah, but in that case, I saw, but the point I want to say, Honorable Nambeshe, who led that delegation, he called the Inspector General of Police. And the Inspector General of Police is saying, talk to those guys and talk to those on the ground and let them follow the chain of command. So who is in charge? Is it the Inspector General of Police, or the small or the junior officer who is stationed in front of Robert Kyagulanyi's house? How can we have this kind of it's like circus. If you are the Inspector General of Police and you have soldiers wearing police uniform, you should be able to know who is stationed in front of Kyagulanyi. How can you now defer to, to citizens, to the officers to say follow the order, the chain of command, when they are telling you we want to go in this house and visit and check on our clients? So if the soldiers on the ground have removed their names, and we can't get them, we know the name of the Inspector General of Police. And we are the ones who know the law should now put pressure on the Inspector General of Police to account why we have a roadblock in front of Robert Kyagulanyi's house, violating the rights of not only Robert Kyagulanyi but all the owners in the area. How can you camp on the private property of a Ugandan citizen? How? Has a crime been committed in the ground, in the home of Robert Kyagulanyi? Has a crime been committed there? These are things we are talking about. You can't have it. How can we claim we have a rule of the rule of law in Uganda when you can, armed soldiers can, or armed people in uniform, whether army or police, can just go and decide to create a military barracks in the home of a Ugandan citizen, even if he's the head of a political party. Even when we are doing investigations, you don't have those rights. And for how long do you cordon off if there's a crime, but there's no crime, but we have camped there because we are in leadership. These things must stop. For those who are in leadership, you are, it's a shame to all of us. Let's not continue shaming. If you have no shame, personally, Uganda has a name. Uganda has a name. Let's protect our name, because all of us, we can't just turn into Kenyans or Americans or whatever it is. There's a process if you are lucky. But as long as we haven't assumed the citizenship of another country, we are Ugandans. But we can't have this situation where there are laws on private property, and as lawyers, we need to find a creative way of going, putting pressure on some of these things to stop. If you contest in an election, that is a political contest. But you also have a right to home, which is protected, and your privacy is protected under Article, I think, 26 of the Constitution. Is it 26 or 27? I haven't checked. So let's stop this. Sorry?
It is 27, my lord.
27. Yeah.
And 26 for property.
26, yeah. So this impunity must stop. And by the way, I'm saying all this as a peace-loving Ugandan, and we love. I'm saying all this as a peace-loving Ugandan, and we love peace. But peace which comes at the cost of violating the rights of Ugandans or some Ugandans is not peace. We all have a right to enjoy peace. You can't say for us we have peace, let those ones not have peace. Where are they going to go? That's why I said if you don't want them, cut off a part of Uganda so that the rest of us, some of us who believe we can talk to others who don't agree with, maybe we'll live in Western Uganda, Western or Eastern, I don't know. But let's just divide Uganda into two. The one where those who believe, lock up everybody, take over anybody's house, camp wherever you want to camp, kill whoever you want to kill. Let them live in one part of Uganda. But that's not the Uganda we were born into, and the Uganda we all, subscribe to, and the Uganda that we, is supposed to be as a country. And our leaders need to follow the law. That's, for me, those are my humble views. This session was scheduled to be a reflection on constitutionalism and the rule of law. And I've given my views, I've shared my views, and I would be happy. I asked the Attorney General, we haven't talked about him. By the way, talking about lawyers, I think we need to engage. I know the Radical New Bar has had raised some of these issues with the Attorney General. But I too wrote a letter to the Attorney General, and it was an open letter. And I said, in case of my retirement, how could you have been the lawyer of the president? And in an election petition, which I presided over, and then having represented your client very well, because the president was the incumbent and was the president-elect, and you were his lawyer, and then you were rewarded with the position of Attorney General, so you became a member of the Judicial Service Commission, and you took over the investigations, participated fully, and then advised, the president. What happened to conflict of interest rules? Is that what the office of the Attorney General is supposed to do under our Constitution? And in my letter to him, I said, maybe you are right. Can we have a debate? I've never had a response from him. I know he was busy campaigning, but now maybe that the campaigns are over, I would be glad to have a debate with him, because I asked him, maybe you are right. Can we have a public debate so that you can tell the people of Uganda which provisions of the Constitution you are interpreting to advise the president, to advise the Judicial Service Commission that a judge who has attained 60 years of age cannot voluntarily retire from the Supreme Court or any other court. These are the things we need to take up. So I think President Semakade, you raised these issues, and you said, how does my case, how do Ugandans connect with my case? For me, I don't need sympathy. What I call upon the people of Uganda to see is, like, if this is happening to a Supreme Court justice who knows the law and who has articulated the law, I told the Attorney General in that letter, the letter is publicly available, that he's incompetent. I also wrote to the president and I said the Attorney General is incompetent, is endangering. Every day he remains in office, he's endangering our country, because if he can't give advice, proper advice on a matter as simple as a judge can retire after attaining 60 years, how are we sure that he's giving correct advice on much more complex and maybe much more complex issues than that?